Okay, what on the agenda?
Yeah, that's so.
Yeah, sorry, it's again. 14th February, 3 p.m. at the Civic Centre. We've got a technical issue with our live webcast. So we've got no members of the public, and we've got one councillor who's actually a cabinet member, but because she is not attending in person, she can't take part in the deliberations, and so she's just observing. She's on. She's not feeling well. She's immobile. That's why she can't get here. But we will hopefully get on with the meeting. And thanks for attending anyway. I know you're on sick, but it's good that you still managed to log on. We'll move to item 1, membership of the cabinet. We've got apologies from Councillor Will Simpson, and obviously apologies from Councillor Muscan, but she's and Councillor Scott as well. Yeah, she's on leave. Item 2, minutes of previous meetings. Can I just have a show of hands? Thank you.
Yes.
Item 3, declaration of interest. If you've got any interest, please complete the form and hand in to Will Andy after the meeting. Item 4, admission of the public. We have got no members of the public. Item 5, deputations or petitions. Any deputations or petitions? No, thank you very much. Council, questions by members of the public. There is no members of the public. Any questions by elected members? Councillor Martin Bob, good to see you, Martin.
Thank you, Leader. Let's hope you're still saying that when I've any chance taking questions.
As always, I'm pleased to see you.
At the last council meeting, there was obviously a lot of interest in Kirklees Active Leisure and the temporary closure of the sports centres. One of the questions that was asked was, when did the council know of the proposed closures? And the reply was given, it was a week before the closures were made. I've been told, and I hope that Cabinet can shed some light on it, that the actual timeline was far greater than that. For the benefit of Cabinet and the watching public, on the 9th of November last year, Cal Board, I'm told, had an away day where the decision was taken to close a number of Cal sites until the end of March. It was then said that on the 10th of November, Kirklees Council were informed of the trustees' temporary closure proposals. Bearing in mind the decision to close the sites was on the 5th of December, that's far more than a week. But the further impact is, after further consideration, a revised proposal for sites was sent to the board, and Kirklees were informed of the revised proposals on the 21st of November, still way in advance of the week timescale we were told at full council. Crucially, Leader, on the 29th of November, Cal trustees were informed that Dewsbury Sports Centre was removed from a list of temporary closures after discussion with the council. That was roughly a week before the decision was made. So we've had nearly a month when the council have been consulted, aware and in dialogue for the closures of the sports centres. And within that week period, at the 11th hour, Dewsbury Sports Centre was removed from the temporary list. And then we see the likes of Batley, Combe Valley and others who were sacrificed. So when the council, in discussion with Cal, took a decision not to close Dewsbury, who suggested Batley or Combe Valley as the ones which should be sacrificed?
Quite a long time scale you gave, Martin. What I will do is, I don't want to give you the wrong information, so what I'll do is I'll get you a full briefing on exactly what happened and when it happened and who gave what information. But as far as I'm concerned, this is a decision of Cal Board. We made that very, very clear from the offset. We are now in the middle of consultations, and one way you could actually save these sports centres in its entirety and save us going through the consultation is, I look forward to that being in your budget amendment. We are now going through a consultation process, and quite rightly you raised it. And if you are really genuinely concerned, Martin, please put the budget and put the money back in. without actually going through the consultation process. But what I will do is I will get you a full detail of the timelines, because the bottom line is this was a decision made by the council. I'm sure you've got supplementary.
Well, yeah, I do, and if I can just wave through the smoke screen. It was a decision legally taken by the Cal Board, that if what I'm told is correct, and you've not denied that the council were consulted on those timeframes by the council, if the council is not consulting with the leadership, there is something wrong with the democratic accountability of Kirklees Council. But when I am told that the trustees were informed, that's not a decision the trustees are making. When in the language, if the Cal trustees are informed that Dewsbury Sports Centre was to be removed from the list after discussion with the council, that seems like influence or decision by the council and not Cal, if the trustees are informed that that's been made. Yes, they manage the estate, but clearly there is a lot of influence from the council on how its estate is being managed. The crucial question is, from the 10th of November, the day after the away day, were Cabinet and the council informed of the trustees' proposals?
Martin, I'm just repeating myself again. This is a decision that was made by the Cal Board. We don't have any decision made, however, regarding what's happened. And I will get you a detailed briefing, because there's a lot of dates that you've banded around. I'll get somebody to give you a full briefing. But I think, rather than sort of keep on reflecting back and trying to blame, that's what you're trying to blame various bodies. Yeah, the opportunity is there. Again, I'm putting it on the record. If you want to put the money in the budget, in the upcoming budget round, then I'm sure, that's the best way forward. Any more questions? Councillor Hall, David?
Yeah, just following up really on Martin's questions. It's not a question about the decision that was taken, it's a question about the manner in which the decision was taken. Because at some point, we are told that the Cal had a discussion with the council. And after the discussion with the council, it was decided that Dewsbury pool would not close and that other pools would close. So can you tell us who at the council was having those discussions with Cal?
Well, we don't know detail, but we have leading members as well, which you are part of. And I don't go into too much detail, but the decision was made by the Cal Board. Can't be more clear than that. So I'm not going to get drawn into what happened and what didn't happen and what didn't happen, and what leading members, which you're part of, were involved or not involved. The decision was made by the Cal Board.
Yeah, well, just coming back with that, it's all right saying, oh, leading members are aware of this stuff. In no way are leading members taking these decisions. Either the Cal Board are taking these decisions or the Cabinet is taking these decisions. The Cal Board took this decision after it says they were in discussion with the council. Now, since your Cabinet runs the council, do we assume that the people who were negotiating on behalf of the council had your backing?
To be absolutely clear, the decision was taken by the Cal Board and not the Cabinet. There might have been discussions that are taking place. There are always discussions that are taking place, not just about Cal, but about everything else. We've got 8,000 officers that actually are continuously talking to people and talking to everybody, not just the people who use the swimming baths. But what I will do is I will find out and get your response in detail. As far as the Cabinet is concerned, we have had no decision whatsoever in doing what Cal did. That was the Cal Board decision. They are consulting at the moment, and I think people should be feeding their views into the decision-making process. There's a window of opportunity for everybody to feed their views in. And then there's also an opportunity to put in their budget amendments. Okay. Councillor Bolt.
Okay. Whilst looking forward to the detailed response, could I ask for your assurance then that detailed response will include the timeline? I'm referring to what I've been told here from the 9th of November onwards. I think a detailed response should equally, from Cal and from the council, include the timeline of dates when things took place.
I am going to not give you any commitments because, like you say, you've been told. There's a lot of things I get told. A lot of the things I get told a lot of times is incorrect, and I don't want to react or not react on anything. But what I will do is, in response to what you've raised, I will get something in writing. Councillor Lawson, sorry, I missed you.
No, that's fine, thank you. On Saturday, I met with some quite rightly concerned residents at Oakenshaw, at the site of the cross that's been removed for repairs. The overriding question there was, when will some action be taken on replacing the cross?
Hey, is that the one that
Yes,
came to you? You wanna-
yes, thank you, Councillor Lawson. That question was asked at council, and I did make a full response in saying that, yes, at this point in time, we don't know the date because it is going to cost a great deal of monies, but at the same time, it's not just the money, it's also about the safety of the monument itself and the pedestrians and the drivers, because I said at the time there are cars that can't get round if it's in the current position. We will get round to, when the point arrives of reinstatement, local people will be consulted. There has been a lot of discussions with MPs and ward councillors about the issues to do with that replacement of that monument. And I'd said at the time, I could not give you a definitive date.
Thank you, Councillor Mather. John, you got it?
Yeah, so can you reassure residents at the moment that, because at the moment there are a series of concrete blocks guarding that site that keep mysteriously moving around. We don't know quite how they move around. Maybe it's traffic that hit them occasionally, but nobody puts any claims in. Can you give us some reassurance that that will not be allowed to continue, and that you will concentrate on bringing a resolution to that situation? Because currently it's not acceptable the way it stands at the moment. It's dangerous. I would back that up and say, can you undertake to say that any temporary measurement is given a timescale that will then not be allowed to slip into a permanent measurement?
Thank you, Councillor Lawson. What I can say is the situation is monitored, and that movement we know about, and I think whilst I cannot give you a resolution of what's going to be done, we are looking at ways to ensuring the safety of all road users and making sure that it doesn't look like an eyesore. But at this moment in time, I'm unable to give you any fixed dates, but I will promise to get you a better idea of what's likely to happen.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Box.
Thanks. Just following up on John's point, having driven to that part of Oakenshaw recently and seen the situation which Councillor Lawson outlines, Councillor Mather has said that the decision or the inference that you're not replacing the monument is because of safety concerns. Could I ask, therefore, that the safety audit which was undertaken to produce that advice, based on the current temporary situation which John's outlined, and the reinstatement of the monument, which seems to be within the similar footprint, is put in the public domain so that the residents can see, and also that safety audit and assessment should include what's called a swept path analysis, which is showing vehicle movement, how vehicles can negotiate, because it is, with the bollards moving around, it is quite tight. So to have come forward with a position that you can't do X because of safety, one would expect that there is in the public already a safety audit which is available for people to see.
Thank you, Councillor Ward. I will check about the safety audit. Safety concerns have been raised by residents, have, where officers have gone out and spoken to residents. They've had photographic evidence. They've taken ward councillors and MPs to that spot to check the safety. That much I know, but I will get further information. But all I can say is we would not be making this up if it wasn't an issue. Thank you.
Councillor Hall?
Yeah, thank you, Leader. I just changed tack a little. Talk about the in-year savings that we were told about back in November. Can you tell us how much of the 34 million that we were projected to have a shortfall has actually been averted by actions that have been taken since November?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Councillor Hall. Yeah, we've been asked a number of times similar questions. And really, the same answer. We are confident that we will achieve the targets that we've set for this financial year. I think we've shared before, the amount of reserves we're going to have to draw down on, and we've shared those numbers. In terms of the actual number against the in-house or in-year savings, or in-year savings, I haven't got that number to hand at this point, but certainly I can follow up on that. I think the view was that we wouldn't see accurate numbers until, obviously towards the end of the year, but I'll certainly pursue that and see if we've got any further updates. But we certainly, from our last discussions with Ayman, we're certainly confident that we should hit that in terms of the projections. But I will come back to you, definitely.
Yeah, thank you for that. I do appreciate that. If you remember, just to go back on the timelines, we were as members were generally informed at the beginning of November that there was going to be a shortfall due to unprecedented circumstances across the board. Really. So, no issue with that. And then it was laid on thick by officers that these were going to be emergency decisions. In order to avert this £34 million loss in a year, decisions had to be made then and there across a whole raft of different spending commitments to make sure that this was minimised. And indeed, you might remember I came to Cabinet on the 16th of November to lend some support to what we were going to do, which I still support. These decisions have to be made, and provided the correct one, I think you made the right decision to do that. What I'm just a bit worried about is that time is getting on. We're now 3 months after that. And as yet, we haven't been told whether anything is going on to save any of this money, to save any of this spending, or what that's going to amount to. Now, I appreciate we might come in at year end on the VOG, but if a lot of that is coming from temporary use of reserves, it's not actually finding the efficiencies in the year that we were expecting. And so what I'm really wanting to know is, is Cabinet still having discussions week to week? If it is an emergency, I hope you are, as to how much of this money is going to be saved and where we're going to find them from.
Well, just to come back on that, you're absolutely right. We have looked at this as an emergency, and you're right, and you provided that support, and it's good to hear the ongoing support. In terms of the projected savings, the efficiency savings, they remain the same as we referred to. We have not increased the split between that and the reserves. So we continue to drive the same targets that we set ourselves previously. And I'm assured from what my discussions that we are on target for that, but I haven't, as I said earlier on, I haven't got an exact figure that I can provide you this base at this point, and on the basis as well that, as you will expect, some of these savings do not show through immediately as well. They take a bit of time in terms of calculations. The key areas that have been looked at, certainly, we know recruitment has been one. There's been savings which are more difficult to calculate based around some of the assets in terms of closing down, in terms of reduction in energy costs, etc. They're the ones that are taking a little longer to calculate. But I will follow up on this and see what we can give you as an indication. Now, my feeling would be it will not be any exact numbers at this point. We'll probably take still a number of weeks before we get to that point. But again, do appreciate, it's absolutely valid question. Appreciate you asking it. It's questions that certainly I ask on a regular basis, and we are pursuing this and monitoring this on a weekly basis as well.
Okay. Councillor Lawson?
Yeah, just a brief return to open, if you don't mind. There have been a couple, and thanks for your answers before, that was very much appreciated, thank you. There's been a couple of requests for the archaeological report that Council commissioned on the site, for that to be either public or given to ward councillors. Could you commit to doing that for us, please? It's just give us an idea of just how important archaeologically the site is.
Again, Councillor Lawson, I would have to ask the officers, and I don't see why the councillors couldn't have a look at the archaeological report. I'm not sure about the public domain, but we will be able to share it with you.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Bowles?
On that, thank you.
Martin?
Ironically, honestly, we haven't set this up. It's on a similar vein, where officers are procuring legal advice to inform a decision, be that something like that, or a planning decision such as Northorpe Lane in Murfield, the Amazon in Cleckheaton. Why isn't that legal advice included in the planning report? Why isn't it made available to elected members and the public who are making representations at a decision-making process? And why are members of planning committees who ask to see the legal advice told that they should just take it on trust that it's been read and the précis they've been given is correct? That was the case at strategic planning, and 3 members asked for a deferral.
Yeah, Martin, firstly, you're making very serious allegations, and I hope that the intention isn't allegations. Every single officer of this council takes their job very, very seriously. Officers are completely impartial. You know, we have got some of the best officers in the country, and especially on planning, they do an excellent job. They do a very robust job. They do everything with due diligence. And the facts of the matter is, right, is there's nothing that has come to me by anybody, right, regarding any undue influence or any other indication that you alluded to. If you do have any example, I would suggest you raise them privately with our legal officer, because you are making some very serious allegations. I'll leave it there.
I'm not making an allegation. I'm repeating what went on in a public planning meeting where members of the planning committee asked to see the legal advice which is being referred to. Members of the public who were affected by the planning had asked to see the legal advice which is being referred to. I'm not making allegations. What I'm saying is that elected members and members of the public were refused sight of legal advice which is being procured by the council. You're relying on it for a decision. Why isn't that made in the public domain? And especially when members of a planning committee are expressing concerns about that they wanted to review that.
I think Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, I think I can't confirm this is exactly the meeting, but I'm fairly certain I was in the meeting that Councillor Paul is referring to, at the time, the response was fairly clear that we were given advice by qualified legal experts, which we then take on board and follow. That we don't question their advice in terms of their professionalism, and certainly in terms of some of the detail. And I think that was what some members said as well. So there was a mix at that time. I certainly wouldn't expect, as a member of a planning committee, to have all the detailed legal advice. I would expect our qualified and expert professionals to give us that advice and provide it accordingly. In the same way as if I was paying for my own legal advice, I would expect that legal advisor to give me that advice. So that was the view at the time. Now that was a view that some of us expressed. I can understand other people have a different view, but that's certainly the way we approach it. So I think that was the meeting. I'm fairly certain that was the meeting where it was asked as such. But
Councillor Patterson, I'm assuming.
Yes,
you
I
are-
was at that meeting
Yeah.
as well, and I know exactly what you're referring to. I mean, I don't think the advice, the legal advice was refused. I think it was exactly as Paul Davis says, that our own legal planning officer had expressed the view or told us that they had looked at the legal advice that had been sought from elsewhere, and they were giving us their opinion, which is that is the one that we took. I don't think that legal opinion wasn't refused. It was just that it wouldn't be helpful. It would be too complicated if I actually even remember it correctly what she said. But we do have our own legal representation there, and as Paul says, yes, that's the advice that we should take. Not the. In fact, that they may give us advice different to what the legal opinion said. But so we take the advice given by our own legal officer there.
Thank you, Councillor Patterson. Councillor Lawson.
Yes, thank you. Several cabinets ago, we were talking about the bid for levelling up funds. And I asked the question about the market bid and what was the plan B should that fund be unsuccessful, as many of those applications were. Do we now have that plan B in view?
Councillor Graham Turner.
Yeah, thanks for it. As yet, John, no, we're looking at all options. We're looking at options of possible external funding from elsewhere. So we are looking at it. I am disappointed that we didn't get it. I mean, we've put 8 bids in now and got 1 out of 8, and I'm personally speaking, and it doesn't feel very much like levelling up, because what we got wasn't the most complicated. The biggest plan. It was a relatively small scheme in levelling up terms. So I was a bit disappointed we've only had 1 out of 8, and we don't know as yet whether there'll be a LUF 3. I suspect not, because I don't think timescales really work for LUF 3. So, but yes, we are looking at alternatives, and we have started to look at alternative funding packages and see if there's any more money out there from an alternative source.
Will it be very much a reduced plan from what you had originally? Because I think the original bid was about 17 million.
About 18.
About 17, 18 million. So are we looking at a very much reduced plan?
We're looking at all options at the moment, and if there is alternative funding out there or partners we can work with on the development, then we'd like to push ahead with the plan as it stood. As I say, until we get some of that investigations carried out, when we've looked around, it's a bit difficult to predict what we will do. But our ambition, as the ambition of this cabinet has been for the last few years, is to invest in Kirklees and drive the local economy forward, and that remains the plan.
Yeah, just on a similar note, in terms of levelling up bids, this time around we put 4 bids forward. The Batley bid was successful, which was really appreciated, but the bid for Balfour Mills wasn't successful. The bid for Penistone Line, which was a really well presented bid, which was really disappointing, that was not successful, along with the Bristol Market bid, which wasn't successful. And I know a number of other authorities were also in the same situation, and I've asked some of our external advisors outside the council how much is it costing both authorities to put these bids in, and estimated around £24 million, and a lot of them haven't even got anything. So I think, and again, this is across the piece, you know, on a cross-party basis, you know, the Mayor Andy Street down in the Midlands, he's made it very clear that, you know, you should actually have a different criteria. It should be a beauty contest. It should be a competition. The authorities are sort of like competing with against each other. You know, it should be based on need. It should be based on robust evidence and facts, and that is something that, at least if we've got that, then we won't need to actually go through this beauty contest and put a lot of money and a lot of resource in with a result that you haven't got anything. But like Graham says, you know, we still have ambitions, and we will still carry on looking at the particular issues you raised regarding the free market. We'll carry on looking at alternative funding and how we can actually present something that actually means something, because we don't want to reduce it so much that it doesn't have an impact. Anyway, any more questions or comments, councillor Martin Bob?
Thanks. Going back to last council meeting, questions were asked to Councillor Sokol as the appointed representative of Cal. He's appointed by the council, not Cal as spokesperson, to be clear on that. Councillor Sokol's advice from Cal was that he couldn't comment on any matters referring to Cal, and we take that as a board member and of a charity. So the question is, what's the point of having a spokesperson appointed by Kirklees Council who can't speak on the subject to which he's appointed?
Excellent question, Martin, and that is something that we were looking at in terms of moving forward, because you know Cal was given a very, very clear remit in terms of managing and making decisions and providing a service to residents of Kirklees and outside if people want to come and use our centres. But if the legal arrangements are such that, you know, what happened in this case is that he can't really say anything, then the whole governance needs to be looked at. And I think, you know, we need to look at that relationship. We need to look at what the options available. And it's something that, you know, we are taking very, very seriously, you know, because there needs to be a review of how we can make sure that we continue the services to our residents. Supplementary, Martin?
Well, yeah, and thank you for that. And I think we are in agreement that it's the issue again comes back to transparency. If questions can only be asked about things at council and cabinet, and the answer from council and cabinet is speak to Cal, and there isn't the opportunity for residents and users to ask Cal, then yes, there needs to be an issue about governance, even if somebody from Cal has to come to meetings and answer questions, because the idea of not being open to question about how decisions were made is not something that sits very well in a transparent and democratic society, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, like I said, we will be looking at that, and we will be reflecting on in terms of how we move forward with Cal in the future. Okay, that just brings us nicely to end of the 30 minutes. I've gone over 1 or 2 minutes, my apologies. We've got one item that's on item number 8, admission arrangements for community and voluntary control schools, 2024-25. Councillor Carol Patterson, Carol, up to you.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, this is just the annual report on admission arrangements to maintain schools for 2024-25. A consultation took place, as it does every year, last autumn, between sort of October and December, or November and December, on the proposed changes to be made by the authority to some individual schools' PANs. What's the P? Admission numbers, anyway, for each school. This asks for the consultation asks for comments on the proposals and seeks views on any other potential changes that any school, governing body, individual parent may have wanted. Academies have their own admission arrangements, so this wasn't, they're not covered by this consultation. So this year, the authority proposed 4 changes in the light of recent changes to schools in the previous year. The first one was St John's C of E Primary School and Westmore Primary School. St John's had become a through primary and junior school the previous year, and as a result, that meant their PAN needed to reduce and Westmore's go up, or double. And the details are in the report. Sorry. The second one was to Oak Primary School in Crossland Moor, and that just reflected the changes to the PAN there were just to reflect the falling roles in that area. Netherhall Infant and Nursery School and Netherhall Junior School, the changes to their PAN again to reflect falling roles in that area, and also the creation of additional resource places on that campus. And then finally, Birkby Infant and Nursery School, reduction in PAN there to reflect falling school roles in the area. Also, the consultation also asked about setting a relevant area, which is something that we hadn't previously done. It's a legal term, and that is, it's now required because academies, we have, schools have their planning areas, but academies do not have a planning area when they become a multi-academy trust. And to make it more equitable between maintained schools and academies, when making changes to admission arrangements, it helps if there is a relevant area for academy to refer to in terms of consulting people on changes they may wish to make. So that was also part of the consultation. There was only one response to the consultation that was received, and that was in favour of the changes to Oaks School. So that is what the report is here for, to agree those changes to the admission arrangements as I've just described and as detailed in the report. And they will take place, take effect from the school year 24-25.
Yeah. Viv?
Yeah, I'm happy to second this. It is, as Carol says, an annual thing that occurs. It's where our admissions staff constantly look at birth rates, the demographics of the area, look at where a house building is, and actually the needs of local areas. And I'm happy and satisfied that this report is accurate in its proposals, and I would support it.
Thank you very much. Any questions by any Councillor John Lawson?
Thank you, Chair. At the moment, I've had more than one case over the past few years where if a child is unsuccessful in their admission to a school, from Kirklees, they are being given Castle Hall School as an appropriate, as defined, I think, on page 39 of the report, 63 of the pack. Castle Hall from Kirklees, certain parts of Kirklees, certainly Hunsworth, the case I'm dealing with at the moment, is 3 buses away, 2 changes, and a few hours to travel for a child, whatever year they're in, certainly in senior school. Is that, do you think, how is that appropriate? I'm just a bit perplexed by how far we reasonably expect a child to travel to get to school in our borough. I'm not sure whether Kirklees was an extreme case of this.
Yeah.
I mean, well, obviously it's an individual case, so I really can't comment.
No,
but I mean, our expectation is, and certainly all the planning arrangements that there are, in terms of admissions, be they in year or at the beginning of the school year, is that a child should go to their local school. I mean, we as an authority not just believe that it's good for children to attend their local school, it's obviously helps with the green agenda and other things as well. There will be some odd cases, and there really will be some exceptional circumstances behind the one that you've just described, I'm sure, which would mean that it is quite a trek to get to the local school. I mean, without knowing the details of either the individual or the school involved as well, because yes, schools can occasionally take a child above their PAN, 1 or 2 places, but it's not there has to be room in the school to be able to do that. And so, I mean, it's not something we would want to do, though, is to make a child certainly get 3 buses to any school.
So it's not an isolated case by any means. There's been about 3. If I'm casting my mind back, there's probably about 3 in the last 2 or 3 years. Do you expect, or could we expect in a place like Kirklees, where there are many large housing developments, for this situation to deteriorate? If so, what monitoring do you have in place to keep an eye on that, to make sure that we haven't got lots of children in the same?
I wish, can I just nip back to get to the office to get my really thick document that I actually have with me today, and I was only referring to it earlier, which is all about school planning places, or planning for school places. Yes, there's plenty of monitoring every year. It's looked at every year. It's not just individual, the needs of or an individual school that are taken into account as to the amount of space they have in each year group. It's the whole planning area that's taken into account as well. And it is, you know, so the whole range of from reception classes all the way through right up to sort of 16 plus, you know, the numbers of children in any particular area, and where they will be able to go, and taking into account house building as well, are assessed. And each year there is this document that thick, which says whether or not more places will be needed in an area, in an individual school, or not, the opposite. On the whole, throughout Kirklees, school places or need for school places is going down despite house building. There is a reduction generally across the country, and in Kirklees, in terms of numbers of children in schools, and that every planning area is on that sort of downward trajectory on the whole. There are some schools where it's on a level playing field. Very few schools where it's going upwards, but where it is, and we've recently had reports to council about that, where we've had to provide, I mean, in secondary schools now particularly, because we have a bulge of children going through secondary schools, we are either providing extra classrooms if needs be, larger dining areas if needs be, except I mean, of course, all these capital works take some time to prepare as well, then we need to obviously look ahead to see where these places might be needed, but certainly it is monitored frequently.
Can I just make clear, Chair, for the record, I was speaking as a councillor,
Yeah,
not as a governor of Wycliffe Man School.
Not worry. Any more questions?
Just on what Councillor Patterson said, one of the areas is the East Minecraft Academy, where the man is listed, and it's a very popular school, and lots more children going there. But going back to Councillor Lawson's point, would it be possible, Councillor Lawson, to have sight of this huge document you've got, and that will better explain anything, in particular reference to
Yeah. I'm sure it's a public document, so yes.
Yeah,
if it's public guidance, I'd appreciate if you could send it.
Yeah. I think I'll send you a link. It is that thick.
No, I think you made some valid points, right? Yeah, because I think although the numbers are going down, years of education reforms, the fragmentation of the education system generally, the governance around schools, you know, are we responsible, you know, as a governing body or autonomous board, you know, are they not autonomous? Yeah, and the intention of the flexibility actually is counterintuitive and counterproductive, because what happens is he actually puts parents in a straitjacket. And the example you just gave, I can give you some examples in my own ward, and it becomes very, very frustrating to parents and to the child as well, you know, going around hopping up on a bus. And the bottom line is, right, local schools should be for local children. And then you start to actually develop the quality, right, within that community. But it's a minefield of a situation, and the document that Councillor Patterson refers to does try to address that. And that's when we do, as an example, we do find that you've got a big influx of children, like the school in Huddersfield, Highfields. You know, we build that because the demand for that area was very high. But again, you know, we try and stay ahead of the curve. It's difficult trying to actually manage all the expectations. Any more questions, comments? On that note, can we raise the report?
Yep.
Thank you, members.
Thanks.
John, if you want to step this way, I'll look up the
We don't bump into one another.